Welcome to Overnight Wisdom, a show where we sit with change makers, artists, business leaders, and thinkers. Each conversation is an invitation to slow down, to go deeper, and unearth the quiet insights that shape who we are. If you're seeking honest reflections, unexpected wisdom, and a deeper understanding of what it takes to not merely survive, but to thrive, you're in the right place. What does it mean to feel at home, not in a place, but in your own skin? In this episode of Overnight Wisdom, cultural critic and scholar Dr. Yaba Blay joins me to explore Blackness, not as biology, but as political consciousness, beauty, not as vanity, but as an institution of power, and colonialism, not as past tense, but as a design still shaping who is seen, who is safe, and who is believed. Dr. Blay reminds us that home is the place where our humanity is acknowledged. She unpacks why colorism and skin lightening aren't simply about preference, but survival within a hierarchy built on proximity to whiteness, and why the most radical act may be the simplest one: to keep questioning. In this conversation, she also talks about the personal cost of her work and her forthcoming book, To Become Beautiful. If you've ever felt split between cultures or pinned under someone else's definition of beautiful, this episode is for you. Well, welcome today, Dr. Yaba. Really great to have you here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
I want to jump right in. Dr. Yaba, we know, before you were a professor, before you were an author, before you are the cultural critic, a phenomenal one, by the way, that you are now, there was just you, a little girl growing up in New Orleans. What was life like? How did you become the amazing person we know today?
That's a broad question. I mean, what was life like from a child's perspective? I guess it was, I think now as an adult reflecting, I recognize how so much of my upbringing in the culture of New Orleans, as well as Ghanaian culture, absolutely informed who I am and why I do the work that I do. It's interesting. People use different language. So I call myself first generation Ghanaian American or American Ghanaian. Other people might say second generation. I'll just say that I'm the first person in my family to be born in America. Yeah.
Right.
So my father, also a professor, now retired, came to the US to do his doctoral work in sociology in Madison, Wisconsin, of all places. My mother joined him later. They moved to New Orleans because his first position was at Xavier University. And so I was born there. And so again, as an adult looking back, I have a lot more forgiveness and I can extend my parents a lot more grace when I think about my upbringing. But as a little, dark-skinned girl with kinky hair in New Orleans, there was a lot of time I spent not understanding why my parents didn't buy me certain things or my mother didn't do my hair in certain ways, and why couldn't I have these clothes and go to these places and explore these things. And as a child, I'm just comparing myself to my peers, most of whom were from New Orleans, multi-generationally so. And so then here I am, this little African girl trying to fit in. On the other side of things, because I am the first to be born in the States, then there's family. Right. And so then I don't have an accent, or I don't speak Chui fluently, or the way I even pick my fufu from the bowl is somehow different, And so I still feel like I live, I exist, I identify between cultures and not fully accepted by either. There's a story that lives in me. One day it'll come out about the first generation experience. I'm off topic, but it's connected. One of my favorite television shows is 90 Day Fiancé. Yes, I like reality TV, but also I'm fascinated by whatever it is America represents to people all over the world, that they will leave everything behind to get there. Family, culture, that they will adjust themselves to this culture that in a lot of ways that we're seeing in this very moment doesn't even accept you. But you want it so bad. Again, stay with me. There's this one episode, 90 Day Fiancé. It's seasons ago, this young man named Michael who's in Nigeria, and he falls in love with Angela, who's this woman from like the backwoods of Georgia somewhere.
Oof.
Right. And so they have this toxic relationship where she is constantly reminding him that he needs her. It's like she's holding it over his head that he wants to get to America. So you got to treat me right. You got to do what I say. Like, she is the boss. But of course, he hasn't gotten his visa. It takes forever for him to get the visa, of course. So she's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So the one episode, she proposes to him. Michael jumps out of his chair, like the joy in this man's whole body. And so, they do cutaways. So they cut to him. He's wearing an American flag hat. He's holding up some American flag boxer shorts. And he's like, Donald Trump, I'm coming to see you. I'm coming home. And I'm like, wow, which is a whole nother conversation, right? Which is something, again, going home and seeing it, the extent to which we see our folks, duality, they prostrate to America and to what America represents, no matter what. And I have a sister friend in Ghana. We always have these back and forth conversations, which are good for me. Yeah. Because it's like having to, again, extend grace, forgiveness, if that's the language I want to use, but to also temper myself. Like the Yaba that wants to go in and say no and like save everybody and, teach everybody that America doesn't care about you. White supremacy operates in this way. They don't care about you. This is our history. There are all these things. But the privilege that I've had to be raised by my father, a son of Nkrumah's Ghana, the privilege that I've had from very on to have critical thinking imposed upon me, required of me. Like, for me to expect that of everybody, it's a lot. And so I hope that somehow answers your question, but I feel like life, my own lived experiences, looking back, like the whole evolution of it all makes sense. I majored in psychology as an undergrad student for no other reason except I was a good student insofar as I could memorize, spit it back because I knew it was expected of me, but there wasn't really much that I liked. I was going to be a lawyer because doctor, lawyer, the options for a little African girl. Be a lawyer. I want to be a lawyer. So I decided I picked psychology because it seemed interesting and it wasn't sociology, which is my father's field. I worked as a social worker. I got a master's in counseling psychology. I was a therapist for a few years. I didn't like it anymore. Went back to school in Black studies. Kind of studies just made sense. So yeah, I think that's more so like the academic journey. But again, now looking back, it's like all of the pieces. So the things that I have explored academically as a scholar are really answers that I've needed for my own self,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. There's a lot in that. I feel like I could just unpack for 2 hours. What is coming up for me though is what you speak on in terms of just how many of us on the African continent view the US and the West. There's this aspiration that is where it's better. That is where we're accepted. That is where we have opportunity. And there's so much that intersects with this coloniality, this way of thinking. It's a remnant. I feel like there's a emotional, generational, psychological brainwash and unlearning. So we need to do a lot of unlearning to let go of that. But then there's also a leadership problem, across our countries in terms of having the right infrastructure, having the right systems, resources, processes, and then also thinking about class, which is also this manufactured social construct that a lot of African countries, especially those that were colonized by the British, also have within them. But of course, I hear you because I see that even like in the simple things where I could be in traffic in Lagos and say the person sitting next to me is a white person or somebody who does not look Nigerian. And when you have, unfortunately, the kids on the streets who are begging for money, they run directly to that other person because they believe that in some capacity, I cannot help them, that it's the white man or the person who presents as different that can help them. So, there's just a lot to unpack and grapple with.
And as you talk, I keep coming back again. It's the challenge for us, that notion of like empathy, right? Or understanding differently. Like all of this was by design.
Yes.
All of it is by design. And I feel like a lot of times we get more frustrated with our own people than with the system.
Yeah.
But it's like everything is by design. So when we think about our leaders who push back, where are they? They're dead. They killed Nkrumah.
Yes.
They killed Lumumba. Yeah. Anyone who has the audacity to say we are not functioning according to your rules, they get rid of you. So there are risks involved a lot of times with operating outside of that structure. It's interesting because I love, of course, it's home. I love Ghana. Yeah.
Mm,
When I go there, I feel so rejuvenated. But I also know that I don't think I could make it long term.
mm,
Think I could live in Ghana, not meaning I would have to spend some time there and spend some time abroad too, just for some emotional balance. And I could be wrong. Just from the experiences I've had so far, maybe I haven't found the right social circles. And I have pretty dope social circle, right? But there's a challenge in there because of me. I own it. It's me, my expectations, my frustrations, me wanting to save us all, you
mm,
know? I don't think it will be good for me emotionally and spiritually because, again, I don't wanna say it is what it is because I don't surrender in that way, but it's gonna take
mm,
a lot of work generationally so, and I think we have made some progress. The frustration, though, is when you see there's been progress and then you see those remnants where the
mm,
progress hasn't
mhm,
been made. Like
mhm,
you said, with the kids running to the white folks, it's ooh.
mm,
You already know the way
mm,
that we look at white
mm.
people. Very, I don't want to say sad, it's by design, but it is so frustrating.
It is
It is
incredibly.
so frustrating.
It is incredibly. There's a man I know. He spent a lot of time living in Finland. He is brilliant, Nigerian man. And so he moved back to Nigeria and he's bringing on all this. He's putting on this entrepreneurial programming, conferences, and he always does it with somebody else's name, like a Finnish import, a European import.
Mm,
And after a few times, I had to have a conversation with him when he reached out, hey, can you support? And I said, no, I'm not going to support you until you put your name on it, right?
mm,
And oftentimes he puts their name on it, they don't even give him a cent. So he does the work, he goes into debt. And then what he says to me, in Nigeria, people would only support this or want to show up because it is attached to European branding. And I also reflected on we collectively have a responsibility to say, no, I'm
yeah,
not going to support you anymore until you put your name on it because your name is enough. But there's that push and pull where, as much as the system works exactly as it should, and then we become the reproducers of the same
agent,
system that benefits on our extraction.
absolutely. And then when you go there and you get the microphone and you say such things, you are the problem.
Of course. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that's what I mean by the frustration of it all. But again, I'm grateful for the privilege to be able to reflect and see the bigger context of it all and the few people, if it is a few people that I can not only teach but learn from. Like even if it's a handful, then I think that it's worth it.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you. This is great. All right. I need to stay focused. I have a question around Blackness. Specifically, now we're talking about Africa. For me, I don't know if it's the same for you. I often find that as a Black woman in the world, I mean, I've lived in the US, I've lived across Europe in some countries, I often feel freer the
Mm,
moment I step on any African country. And I don't know what that is, but I realize that there's something I carry with me that just releases when I'm in a place or on the continent. Is that something you experience?
yeah, it's home. And
Hmm.
it's home. I mean, we can carry home with us. Yeah. There are a lot of places in the States and in the diaspora. I feel really at home in Brazil. I went to
Mm.
Colombia to a certain region. I felt really at home. I feel home in Jamaica. I
Mm.
feel home in a lot of places because home is a place where your humanity is acknowledged. Yeah. So you step off the plane and you are normal, which
Mm.
makes you human. Nobody's staring. You don't have any anxiety or fear about the microaggression about what's possible. Now you might have to be on your toes for other reasons.
Mm.
Yeah. But you're home because your spirit, I think, feels safe in that
Mm.
spiritual way, if that makes sense. And so
Absolutely.
for me, that so happens to be a place where the majority of folks are Black.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, and even in that regard, because 'cause I've also been in some Black spaces where I don't feel at home. So I think it has to do with culture
Mm.
as well. But it is hard to name. It is hard to put a finger on. It's a feeling.
Mm.
It's a feeling, yeah. But I do think it's culture and it's spirit as well.
I really love what you said. Home is the place where your humanity is acknowledged. So true, you know? So true. You don't have to defend
Mm,
anything, no guards. At least I think, yes, there are other things to worry about,
right.
same as anywhere else, but at least not just this thing that I think a lot of racialized people carry in spaces not designed or built for them.
For sure. I mean, I went to Italy once, me and 2 other girlfriends, and we went to this restaurant, and the server was Ghanaian, and he introduced himself with a Western name, and I'm looking at him, and it's something I do so many times, like, I can look at somebody, and it's not just their complex it's something about just the facial it's something, and I'm like, "Where are you from?" Said Ghana, and when I said, "Me too," the way this man just it was like he felt home
Mm,
in that moment. Meanwhile, we're in a restaurant where
right.
white people are literally staring at us. Children are literally pointing, and I've never been anywhere where people were pointing and unashamed of it, and
Mm,
that was my experience in Italy, and I know we were in the hills somewhere. I can't even remember in this moment where we were, but yeah, people pointed and stared, and there was no shame in that, and so this man was so happy to see me. I had the same experience in an elevator in Abu Dhabi.
mm,
And this man saw me. We've passed his floor. I'm like, let's get off the elevator. He was willing to ride with me up and down this elevator just to talk. Like he's speaking to me in Twi. I'm telling him that I can understand, but I don't speak well. He's like, no, I'm going to teach you right here in this elevator. It was so much fun. But again, recognizing yourself. Being in Abu Dhabi is cool. Like nobody's staring and you don't feel out of place, but it's different
mm.
your people culturally and otherwise, And so, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I was walking to pick up my kid yesterday and a black man, I don't know him, walked past me. We gave each other the nod. Like it's just something, about like seeing each other. And a friend of mine put it really well recently where she said, we are not Nigerians in Nigeria or Ghanaians in Ghana, but
No,
we are Nigerians and Ghanaians when we go out. We are Africans, we're brothers and sisters and people.
for sure.
And I think that's really interesting to also reflect on, in terms of it's I mean, also the design, right? Colonialism, where within our countries, we don't even see ourselves as one. So there's this division inherent within the system. But
No,
then because we're now out in a place where it's not for us, and sometimes we get pointed at restaurants or random places,
I
then it's
mean,
like you see somebody that looks like you.
no, for sure, outside of the space,
Yeah.
yeah. No, but as you're talking, all of that is by design. I mean, that's how racialization works anyway. And so I'm thinking when you're saying that, we become Nigerian, we become Ghanaian when we leave home, we also become Black.
Yes.
Right, and I think that a lot of people have different ideations about what Black is. Some people conflate Black with African American
Mm-hmm.
without recognizing the political
Yes.
ideation of Blackness. So Black only functions in opposition to white. We didn't need Black
Mm,
until there was a white, and
mm,
white doesn't exist without a Black, right?
mm,
It's all constructed.
mm,
Right? And so it would take leaving that space to understand what Blackness symbolizes and how it functions, particularly in relationship to other colors,
mm,
yeah, in different places. When we think about coming back to the continent, what it means to be Nigerian and what it means to
mm,
be Ghanaian, these are false borders.
mm.
Right? Because when you're in Ghana, I can say I'm a Khan, someone else will say they're Gan, someone else will say they're Ewe. Like we are our cultural grouping.
Yes.
My father's people are from the Western region, very close to the Ivorian border. And so there are Nzima in Ghana, there are Nzima in Cote d'Ivoire. Same people,
Yes.
we speak the tongue of our colonizers, you speak the tongue of yours, but culturally,
Yes.
same folks.
Same folk.
And so this identity that we've taken on has been imposed upon us in a particular way. Same way outside of the space. And unfortunately, like when we also take on the mentality, this is now how, and again, forgive any of your listeners. I mean, not to offend. I have never been to South Africa. I know people from the diaspora who love it. I know Ghanaians who hate it
Mm-hmm.
because the xenophobia.
Yes.
I've not experienced it, right? But it's something interesting, even having not been there, it's something interesting to reflect upon. Wow.
Mm, mm, mm.
Is
I
it
think
that you don't see yourself as part of the continent? Is South Africa its own country? What is it that you know about, or you think you know about other African people? Like, I'm not going to say I don't get it. I think it's really interesting.
I think South Africa also makes a really fascinating case, right? Because it's the only country where a white majority exerted so much power over a minority over a black majority. And one of my friends who's South African, black South African, of course, there's also the thing about who's black, who's colored, who's white, and that whole thing is muddled up. A friend of mine, South African black girl, travels to Nigeria. And for the first time in her life, she saw a white man being told, go to the back of the line. Because this white man, apparently, they flew in and he just walked right past. This is like
Everyone.
5 years ago. So it's not like 20 years ago. He walked right past everyone because in South Africa, that's what you do, apparently, in
Right.
some spaces.
Not Nigeria.
Not Nigeria. I mean, he was shouted all the way back. And my friend was talking about just like her mind was blown. It was the first time she'd ever seen anything like that. And she also felt so much pride in that moment. She hadn't realized just how much she had a complex with her blackness within the context of South Africa.
Mm.
And that just made her feel like, okay, this is my space. That's also quite interesting. But yeah, South Africa is a conundrum. I struggle.
Yeah. And I keep saying I want to go, but then when I hear my friends from other African countries talk about it, I'm like, I wonder. And again, it's because I have this, I need to come up with a word for my identity. Just between these two places, I don't know how I'll be seen.
Mm,
I'm an African woman in the United States without question. So then I'm constantly trying to, contextualize and not even defend, but explain that
mm,
I also have a connection to Black American culture. And it's like,
mm.
no, no, no. And then in Ghana, I'm American.
Yeah.
I'm
Mhm,
I'm just American.
mhm.
And I'm like, no, okay, that's fine. And you're still American. I don't know how it would be received in South Africa.
Yeah.
So it is interesting to think about.
It is for sure. What you said earlier about some people become black. So there's some people born black, and I think a lot of Africans who go to the US to study or to the UK or elsewhere across Europe, they become black in a
Mm.
sense. And I have heard, and I think maybe even struggled in my own experience living in the US and across Western Europe, where people have an idea of what it is to be black. I've had people actually have conversations with me like, yeah, but you're not really black. This is in the US. People telling me, no, but you're African. It's not the same. And I have to explain to them that actually, no. Back when I explained, now I just don't engage. But back when I explained, like, no, I am black. And there are different ways to be a black person, right?
Mhm.
The same way I don't tell an Italian and a Spanish person or a Norwegian person, like, hey, you're exactly the same. You're all white, right? There's just a monolith. So
Mhm.
so that's one from the external gaze. And
Mhm.
then also from the internal gaze, I want to engage you on this idea of blackness as a monolith, where even within our own communities, there are some instances where we police identities, how we should present, how we should speak, how we should engage. Why do you think this happens? Why do you think we continue to replicate these same borders and silos for how we can be expansive?
There's a lot happening in my head. And I think I'm stuck on the first thing you said, that
Okay.
some of us are born Black. There's a part of me that wants to push back on that, primarily because I'm thinking of the way I understand Blackness, right? There's so many ways to think. I don't know that this is the answer, that there is the answer, but we can think about, it depends on which Black we're talking about. We're talking
Mm,
about Black the race, Black the culture, right?
mm,
Black the political identity.
mm,
And
mm,
so when I think of Black and when I identify as Black, I'm thinking primarily of the political identity.
mhm,
And so, to say that anything is political is to say that there are negotiations of power at
mhm,
play. And
mhm,
again, in the face of whiteness, in the context of white supremacist culture, Black as a political identity organizes us, right? In relationship to this particular power structure. It does speak to some level of history and
mm,
origins, but it says a lot about the ways in which we are positioned in this world in relation to whiteness. And I know for a lot of us, it's like, well, my blackness doesn't have anything to do with whiteness. And that can be true to some extent, but we also can't negate history, political history, social history, and the ways in which our identities have been forced to operate, to be framed in relation to white supremacy, right? So I think it's so hard because this idea of some of us are born Black. On one hand, I could say we're all born Black this particular political environment. On the other hand, I could say none of us are born Black, right? But then it's hard to say then some of us are born American because America has never claimed Black folks. So then you would have to say African American or Black American. I think we all become Black if we're thinking about it politically speaking. Racially, we're all Black. I think it's the experience and the acknowledgement that is different.
Yes.
Right? And so if you're born and raised in Ghana, in many ways you don't have to, and people will say you don't have to identify as Black, but I also don't think that's 100% true or honest because you do come into contact with people from other places, whether they be from Europe or there are a lot of Lebanese in Ghana, for example. You know there's a difference between you and these so-called foreigners. Right? And so you might say, you might not use Black, but you'll say Ghanaian. You understand that distinction. It might take you being in their presence to see yourself as Black. I just think I hesitate to say, but sometimes I feel like it's a choice.
Interesting.
Like you choose not to be Black.
Yeah.
I'm Ghanaian.
Yeah.
You choose the language because of what has been projected, what Blackness has been projected to be. And so again, it's one of those things where I feel like we need a whiteboard, map it all out, because if you spend enough time online, you'll see what people are calling diaspora wars, right? Where you've got folks in America who are like, this is our country. We built it. If there is ever going to be reparations, we are the only people who are entitled to it. Yeah. People who are quick to point out, well, your people are from here, or you're this, or you're second generation this, wanting to create the distinction. Then you have African descendant folks from other places who also go out of their way to say, I'm not Black American. Or I'm not Black, because they conflate the two. So I'm Ghanaian, I'm Nigerian, I'm all these other things, everything but Black. Because again, when you, by design, if you live in a colonized space and the colonizers are responsible for your education, what images are they going to show you? Even of your own self, but what images are they going to show you of Black people all over the world when you rely on the media to show you anything? If you don't have a passport, if you've never gotten on a plane, if it takes pop culture to teach you about people in other places, then we're screwed. Right? So if you live in a country and all the images you get about Black Americans are coming through media sources, and you, like Michael from 90 Day Fiance, want to go there and take advantage of the white American dream, you don't want to be associated with that. So now you have to go out of your way to prove, to perform your distinction from that. So now you have to speak the best Queen's English. You have to, whatever it is that you think Black Americans do, you have to do the opposite. It's why it's so interesting. It's why you talk about this performance, and I can only speak for the social groups that I've been a part of, particularly thinking of my parents' generation. This notion of should, what you should look like, how you should speak, how you should behave, even the language of behave, particularly in the face of other people, especially in the face of white people. Because there's this idea that if that's how they think about Africans and Black Americans, your responsibility is to show them not that none of us are that way, but that you are not that way. As if it's possible, right? So again, I have no idea if I've answered your question. I don't think it's so cut and clear about this question of who's Black and who's not. I would say we all are. because
Mm.
I'm thinking about it from a political standpoint. If the way race functions is that I should be able to look at you, put you in a box, and in that box, I now know how you function in the
Mhm.
political hierarchy, in the social hierarchy, in the value system that puts the most value on whiteness and white culture and white bodies, and the least value on Black ones. Do you think in that box they are making a decision about who is Nigerian, who is
Mm.
Ghanaian, who is Brazilian? They didn't do that at the bottom of those slave ships. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter,
Right.
right? And that's how I see it. Of course,
Mhm.
I have peers and colleagues who will also bring some clarification and some distinction of that and would argue that, yeah, they actually do care in
Mm.
these contexts. And I wouldn't deny that, right? That there are contexts where, yeah, they might want to hire a Nigerian before they hire a Black American. Absolutely.
Mm.
Because of the presumption about that distinction, right? And so, again, I just think it's so complex.
Mhm.
And I don't think that it's fair for us, even in our attempt to understand it, to flatten it because
Absolutely.
Blackness is not a monolith, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's hard for us to even reflect in such a way that is flat.
Yes.
There's so much nuance, but ultimately, why do we act, behave, perform in the ways that we do? We're trying to survive. We're trying to make it in a particular way. And somebody else might not flatten it and say, it's not survival. That's too simplistic. And it may be. But ultimately, I think it comes down to survival.
So much there to unpack,
Definitely too much.
and I'm I'm hearing you, and at the same time, I'm also thinking about I'm Nigerian. I identify primarily as a Nigerian, and I can tell you that the first time somebody called me Black, I had to do a double take.
Yeah.
Because I've always just been Nigerian. If you need specificity, then I'm Igbo. More, I can tell you the local government area that I come from. My interaction with race did
Hmm.
not exist at that political level down to where I was identified. And this was in complete contrast. So in the US, I learned so much. And I spent 4 years in Mississippi. That was just like trial by fire for me.
Hmm.
Just trying to understand the construct. But I can still look at my mother and I can tell you that my mother does not identify with Blackness in any sense of the word. She's a Nigerian, she's an African,
She
right?
doesn't. She
And
doesn't have to yet. You see what I mean? She doesn't have to yet.
exactly. So I think that is what I mean when I say maybe some people, when you're born within a system where you're not the norm and Blackness is so politicized. And this is the complexity in, I think it's contextual as well, how our identity might form in the different space in which we hold. I think this is why, for example, a lot of Nigerians, when they end up in the US or like in Europe, the slap they get in their face because then they experience racism and
Mhm.
then they experience what it means to be Black in a space that is not created for you. And I think that's where they start to unravel. I'm trying to hold space when I say some people are born Black into a system that has
Mhm.
qualified them as such, and some people become Black when
Mhm.
the first time they have to experience that.
Yes, and I think one thing that's coming to me as you speak is it's a matter of consciousness. I would argue that you can be Black and not know it,
Okay, I can
right?
I can sit
So
with
it's
that.
the comfort of, and I don't want to say ignorance, but you haven't been put into a context where it has been shown to you.
Mhm.
And I think that is the danger because then you do leave that space and you do have a slap in the face. You do leave that space. You go to a new space. You perform as if you are better than those people who you say you're not a part of until you
Mhm.
experience it. When you then experience racism, who do you expect now to rally for you? The
Mhm.
people who've also experienced racism, the people
Mhm.
who can validate, in fact, the
Mhm.
experience that you've had. And so again, it's privilege because I also can't expect folks living in a particular space to learn otherwise. I'm not going to say no otherwise. I'm going to say learn otherwise.
Mhm.
And so as much as we want to, think post-colonial, there's no post to colonial. There's no post to colonial. It's
Mhm.
just not as overt
Mhm.
as it was,
Mhm.
but it is operating exactly as it intended to.
Mhm.
Still, if it
Mhm.
has us thinking that we are better than other people, it's working. If it has us thinking that we have to treat, because this is the other thing, as much as I want to be pissed, like, oh my God, I can't believe you're treating white people better. If I contextualize it, if I understand history, there were consequences to not treating white people as superior. There were consequences. And though they might not look the same right now, these are cultural memories that have been passed down through generation. And so if your mother's telling you to act right in front of white people, it's out of love. She's trying to protect you. And we see that in Black America. Yeah. There is a history of enslaved Africans being killed for not behaving in a particular way. If I say to you, don't go outside without having your pants pulled up, it's not because I necessarily believe that you don't look proper or whatever that is. I think I know how white people will see you. And if white people see you as a threat, they will kill you. So please, my child, please don't give them any reason because I want you to come home. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, it's both. It's both. But for a lot of us who've been doing this work for a long time, I think, 2020 solidified it for me. I'm tired. I know that there's work to be done. I don't quit, but I'm tired. People don't recognize how exhausting it is to try and teach people who are not interested in learning. So that's not my job. Y'all take care of your own people. Let me take care of mine. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. It's exhausting even to have courage. It's something I reflect on in this day and time, the people who do the work. And then that work just becomes expected. Dr. Yaba will say something, that person would do something, and people don't really understand that it becomes really extractive. They support you, but
Yeah.
go do the work.
Yeah.
Go say the thing.
We're going to wait for you to do it.
Absolutely. I want to talk, Dr. Yaba, about beauty as a site of power. So things like hair, skin, fashion, even how we dress, how we present. What do you think gets lost when we underestimate beauty as a site of struggle?
So much. I think because beauty is so often aligned only with women, it gets dismissed as something that is not important to our everyday struggle, particularly within Black culture across the world, right? Again, I'm worried about my Black son coming home. If we understand beauty as its own institution, then beauty, take it away from gender, beauty can absolutely impact whether or not your son comes home because it's the value that is assigned to his aesthetic. But again, hear the language beauty and we think frivolous. We think nails, eyelashes, lipstick, women spending too much time and money. Look at all the conversations that we have about Black women and the beauty industry, the money, but we complain about the money Black women spend on hair that's not theirs. I hear this all the time. Fake hair, want to look like white women, all of these things. No interest in thinking about context. No interest in thinking about beauty standards from such time. We just should know better. And if we don't know better, we hate ourselves. All the time we spend talking about how much makeup. Again, it always comes back to how much money you're spending. I think about in a lot of our home countries in West Africa, I can speak for Ghana. I can probably speak for Nigeria. My mother's generation will say the reason they cut girls' hair in school is so that they can focus on their studies. Yeah. My grandmother's generation will say the reason they cut girls' hair is to make sure that grown men know that they are children. Yeah. And to leave that one alone because she's still a child. So then you become an adult. The rites of passage is you grow your hair because now you're available, right? Those are two different things. But we say we cut their hair so they'll focus on their studies as if beauty is a distraction. As if wanting to do all of these things is a distraction and it's frivolous. And you put too much energy in it. So put it aside so you can focus on your studies. That's not the origins, right? And so beauty is such a broader institution that we actually just don't have the opportunity, I would say, to think about it differently. I wasn't taught about beauty as an institution in school. And then so I had to seek that out. Right? And come across it differently. That's not something that we engage as political, And so what we miss out on is an opportunity again to learn the larger context of how politics, operates, particularly for Black bodies. A lot of my work, my focus is on colorism and skin lightening, particularly in Africa or among Black bodies. When you think about colorism, especially, again, we want to take it back to these kind of surface surface ideas about like what's at risk. You're worried about your black son coming home. What's his complexion? Is he black like me? Because if he's black like me, his body might communicate risk. His body might communicate danger. So if George Floyd had been a little shorter or had lighter skin, would that police officer have felt the need to hold his knee on his neck for as long as he did? Yeah. I'm sure if we did a scan of all of the black people, not just men, but all of the black people who are assassinated by police, and I haven't done it, so I can't speak with certainty, but I imagine that they would be recognizably black. Yeah. And so then when we judge people who lighten their skin, again, as if they should know better, it's frivolous. When we judge women who let me say people who straighten their hair, chemically process their hair, as if, they hate themselves. Why would they do this? We are choosing to ignore a larger political, historical, social context. We are choosing to ignore the wide reach of white supremacist culture. We are choosing to, but it's there.
Thinking about proximity to whiteness.
Oh, God, yes. We come back to that hierarchy. We come back to the hierarchy. Closer you are to whiteness across the board, whether it be how you look, how you speak, how you dress, what you value, what you do, what kind of work you do, the closer you are to performing it according to white standards, the better, or so you think.
Yeah.
Because ultimately the goal is what? It's either to be accepted, right? And people say they want a seat at the table. It's to be accepted. That's why I hate the language of inclusion. Inclusion to what? And how does that inclusion benefit me? It's why we want to be included, performing according to that way, but it's also about wanting to survive. I keep coming back to this language of
Survival.
Some people might think it's an extreme choice of language, but it's what it feels like to me. So as a woman, yeah, and I've been writing about this. It's in my book when I reflect on skin bleaching and the way people are just thinking it's an issue of beauty, or just dismissing it as an issue of colorism without really understanding how colorism functions. If I'm a woman in Ghana and my identity is predicated on whether or not I'm married, and men are free to tell us all that they prefer light-skinned women, and you make skin bleaching, here's a bottle of skin bleach on the counter. I should walk past this. I should know better. You've made it an option for me.
Yep.
You've made it an option, and then you're mad at me for taking the option. So it's okay for men to walk around and say they prefer light-skinned women. It's not okay for me to lighten my skin. But my entire identity as an Akan woman is predicated on whether or not I am married. If I'm not married, then you think there's something wrong with me. And so if men are saying they prefer light skin, I better lighten my skin to get me a man. No? Is that not survival?
It is survival.
If I'm a sex worker on the streets of Accra and men want light-skinned women, is that survival? But we are choosing. It is so easy to dismiss these women, to judge these women, to say they hate themselves. We're not talking to black men. We're not talking to African men who are proud to say they prefer light skin. How do you prefer light skin in a culture, in a country that is majority dark skin? And again, we reject the women for doing so. I'm not saying, yes, everyone, let's lighten our skin. It's okay. I'm saying, let's stop judging. Why is it so easy to judge and dismiss African women, especially for everything that we do? As if these aren't decisions already made for us. And these products became most popular after colonization, after independence. Not when white people were everywhere, when they weren't. That requires some thinking, but we choose not to. So beauty is a larger institution than just, I want to look pretty.
Yeah. It affects everything. If we look at it from a proximity perspective, it functions as a core part of privilege within society.
Absolutely. You don't need education. You don't need anything else. If you are a light-skinned, pretty girl, and they conflate pretty and light-skinned. Like once you say someone is light-skinned, if I'm describing someone to you and I say she's light-skinned, you should know. That's it. She could have 3 eyeballs, but I've told you she's light-skinned. And so therefore you know she's pretty, right? So if you have an office, who do you want sitting at the front desk? she then somehow is evidence of the value of your company, perhaps. So forward facing, oftentimes, I'm thinking of a billboard I saw for an international school in Accra, and it was a visibly, if not biracial, multiracial child.
Yeah. Yeah, I say it all the time, and I think one of the things I'm getting from this, and something that I also agree with, is gosh, we cannot just judge and point fingers. We cannot look at things within the silos. We have to think about them within the context of the system that he operates, and yeah, it feels like survival.
Yeah.
You know, I want to ask you about what it takes to actually dismantle white supremacy. Is that something you've thought about in your work, in your books? How can we dismantle it to reimagine beauty, life, power just differently? Is that possible? Or is that just a pipe dream?
There was a time that I thought it was possible.
Hmm.
The more and more I learn about it, when framed that way, dismantle,
Hmm.
we're setting our hopes really high. If it is going to be dismantled, it would have to be done by white people. I have a colleague, Sonia Renee Taylor. She uses the language of white supremacist delusion in place of white supremacy. And when I was writing, I interviewed her just to help me understand how she came to that language, because I struggle, a lot of time in using the language, whether I write it with a capital W, a small w. I struggle because I have other folks who will say, why do we keep using that language? Why do we keep saying white supremacy when we know it's not supreme? Aren't we just feeding and giving life to this problematic way of being, way of seeing reality? Yes. But then I also think it has to be acknowledged that it is a thing. It is an ideology. It is a political framing that presumes that whiteness is superior and infuses white
Mm-hmm.
superiority. Yeah. So I was talking to her, just, getting different perspectives on the language. And at the time, the subtitle of my book was Dismantle White Supremacy. And she was like, that's not our work to do.
Hmm.
That's their work to do. That's not our work to do. That's why we keep spinning in circles. You think they want to hear anything from you? You think they're going to change because you said so? No, it would take their own people to say this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
That though I benefit from it, I don't want it. It would take them to have that conversation. Now, what our work is to do is and we'll find the language. Again, we need the whiteboard, whether it's dismantle, whether it is, I don't know what the language is. I want to throw it away, ultimately. I want to burn it down. I want to get rid of it. But from an internal perspective, within our own communities, what we do with white supremacy, it is almost like we have to exorcise it from our spirits, all of us, right? So what that requires then is for us to reflect on all of the ways in which we are agents of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as my work is concerned, colorism is the location, right? It could be how we think of politics of hair, beauty culture. Someone else has another contribution to make. My contribution, based upon the work that I want to do, has to do with beauty, has to do with belonging and identity and Blackness. Someone else can talk to us about history. Someone else can talk to us about social political ideas, right? We all have a contribution to make, but we all have to be, maybe it is dismantling. I was going to say undoing. Maybe it's unlearning, but that's for me and you. I can't be concerned about whether or not white folks get it. That's like, in some ways, of course, there are going to be white folks who want to, right, unlearn and undo. And then in other cases, you're going to be beating your head against the wall. Save yourself. Save yourself.
Yes. Oh, that resonates. Yes. Dr. Yaba, doing this kind of work comes with backlash from strangers on the internet,
For sure.
probably also in real life, and sometimes even from our own communities.
Especially.
What does this work cost you?
A lot. It costs sanity. There was a time where I could probably map that out for you, create a list. Yes, from our own communities, folks who think you're just causing trouble, you're ruffling feathers, you're making it harder for the rest of us. We don't all think that way. Thinking of like when we were all online during COVID and all the conversations we were having, lots of Black folks who are like, and I'm going to keep using Black folks as the example because I honestly have low expectations of white folks.
Hmm.
That's my honesty. Yeah. But folks feeling like, why are you always talking about race? There's other things happening. Everything's not about race. You know, that kind of backlash from our own folks is hurtful.
Mm,
You do have moments of like, what am I doing this for? But then ultimately, now I'm at a place where I think I've matured and healed to a point where I recognize that everybody doesn't want to be free. And
mhm,
that's okay. In the same way, I'm not going to beat my head against a wall for white folks. I'm not going to beat myself in the head, for you either. Come,
mm,
don't. If you're open to listening, is what I'm saying, that
mm,
you might see the value in coming along. But if you don't, I can't. You know how much work that would take?
mm,
What's left of me for me? And
mm.
so I jokingly say, save yourself, but it's something that I've had to remind myself of. Everybody can't come.
Thanks for sharing. My colleague said to me yesterday, Chisom, you can drag a horse to the water, you can't force it to drink. So you are a multi hyphenate, right? And how are you learning to balance all of it, your work, your business, your activism in a way that is sustainable?
I'm not.
You're not?
I'm not. I don't ever want to position myself as anyone who has the answers. It's hard. It's
Mm,
frustrating. It's confusing. It's all of those things. I mean,
mm,
all we do is try. I have no answers in that regard.
mm.
It's life. It's
Yeah,
life across the board. We
yeah.
can talk about the ideals, but
Mm.
when life hits, life hits.
I've been reflecting on this a lot, and I shared on a podcast recently that I really don't believe in work-life balance. I think there's a privilege in that, and some of us just, at least I don't know what that is within the context of my life and within the context that I work in and create. It's aspirational. It's just
Yeah.
not real to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
It hasn't been yet. And it's also a privilege. Like, even if I'm a billionaire, there still might not be the balance.
yeah.
Right? Because there have been times where I've gone on holiday and my mind is still consumed with
Yes.
work responsibilities, right? Is that balance? And again, it's not to knock it. For those who found it, like, good for you. I'm proud of
Mm,
you. Send me some tips. But
mm,
yeah, I haven't. And sometimes that balance might look like, you know what, I'm not getting out of bed today.
yeah.
Sometimes that balance, I think I even told you, I'm horrible with email now.
Mm,
Absolutely horrible with email because I know if I open it, there's something there for me to do. Maybe that's balance. I don't
mm,
know, but it might not look all flowery, right? Like
mm,
how it sounds. It might look like, okay, I'm just gonna take a moment for myself.
mm. Thanks for sharing. A question just to round out around whiteness. If you could erase whiteness as a reference point for beauty, what would you say in its place?
Ourselves. And I think the reference point is going to change. And this is through life and through learning and reflection, I really try not to come with the super flowery, lofty, super positive kind of answers, right? Someone else would say, what would you put in its place? I would put myself. I'm my own comparison point. And so if whiteness weren't the comparison point, then I would say within our own cultural groups, I'll tell you, and I don't know if it's like this in Nigeria, let me not presume. Ghanaians love a gap tooth.
Hmm. Nigerians love a gap
When
tooth.
I was little, one of my favorite school pictures, I had the biggest gap with the little piece of gum that hung in the middle. I hated it as a child, right? I actually remember being happy when I got older and my teeth were, adult size and they started to close. And then when I started getting more into doing work around beauty and I would see, and I'm like, this is just, it's gorgeous. Like seeing other women smile, right? It's just beautiful. I also love black gums, in Senegal, how the tattoo, the indigo. I love black gums. My gums are different colors. So I'm like, I wonder one day if I can get my gums blackened. But in the last couple of years, I had my gap opened a little bit and
Mm,
my dentist at the time was an Asian woman. And when I told her I wanted to get my gap open, she was fascinated. Like, why?
mm,
Like so many of my patients, they come, they want veneers, they want Invisalign, they want all of the ways to close the gap. And you want me to open it? And I'm like, yes, please. So we have this whole conversation around cultural beauty standards. And I told her, I said, honestly, I've asked older aunties, I've asked my mom, I've asked people why. We don't necessarily have a reason. It's just what we know to be beautiful. Yeah.
mm,
Like hairstyles, I'm thinking of, the threading. Like these are all things that I appreciate now.
mm.
a child, I'm like, please don't put that thread in my hair, lady. Like, I wanted the beads and bows like my friends, but like, how beautiful is our culture?
Mm,
How beautiful
mm,
is our culture?
mm.
I remember the first time I shaved my hair, not bald, but wearing a very low haircut. I fell in love with myself because there was nothing to hide behind. All you saw was my face. I take my complexion for granted. So many times people will be like, what do you use on your skin? And I just have to be honest. I was blessed. My people have beautiful skin. I feel like if we are able to even look just within even our own cultural groups, like remembering or being reminded of what were our great great grandmother's standards of beauty. I remember going on study abroad with one of my good friends who, she's a thick sister. The men loved her. And she's like, what's happening over here? And so talking to one Ghanaian guy, he's like, it means you're healthy.
Yep.
It could even mean you're rich because
You're wealthy.
you can afford to eat a lot, And so it's so beautiful to me when I see different standards in other places and it
Right.
makes sense in the context. I
Yes.
feel like that is a way for us to feel, I don't know, grounded in who we are. Definitely not. I just paid to have my gap opened, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be a comparison point. There's always going to be an attempt, I think, to adjust and to fit. Maybe it'll be more to our benefit if those standards were based upon ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny story. My sister and I, when we went to boarding school in Nigeria for 2 years. And in that time, we understood very quickly that the gap tooth was cool. So we
Yeah.
took a nail file and we found I had a gap
Did it
tooth
work?
that was it worked. It took time and patience. We did it over the summer, but eventually like it destabilized my gum. So I had to fix it. But yeah, I literally had a gap tooth, at least
Wow.
not all the way, but like,
Yeah.
proper halfway through. I filed my teeth away. Yeah, because that was the standard of beauty.
Yeah.
And even like hair on the body, like they say things like the sideburns,
Oh my
like and like hair on your legs. And I'm
yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, could I be hairier? And then like within a Western context, we're trying to like wax it all away.
Oh yeah. But
It's complete,
even that, there's a whole history behind the ways in
of
which
course.
they have projected hairiness onto Africans as proximity to animals.
Yes.
So there's a whole industry around hair removal, particularly for women,
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to ask about your book. I don't know to what degree you can share. Are you able to share anything about the book? No?
I mean, as of right now, as of right now, I'm pretty certain the title is To Become Beautiful. And I would say that it's part memoir, part mirror. It's my reflection on my journey into coming to do the work that I do. Definitely some reflection on, how I've come to think about things regarding beauty, regarding colorism. And I didn't realize how much, I did, but at a very surface level, but I didn't realize how much of it is a reflection of my own lived experiences. So I spent a lot of time reflecting and sharing on some very personal experiences. And my work on skin bleaching is also a large part of that. Again, wanting to come to the defense of women and our beauty practices, but particularly in the context of skin bleaching. Like so much of what we think we know about skin bleaching, no one's talked to the women who actually bleach their skin or the men. It's so interesting also to see how much of a scandal it becomes when men bleach, right? Almost like we expect women to do these foolish things, but a man, right? But then going to somewhere like Jamaica, where not to say it's accepted, but so many men do it. Yeah. In Ghana, a man bleaches his skin, they question his sexuality, right? Because again, it's something that is feminine. So just wanting to bring context to the conversation, the context that we don't often have around bleaching, but it's also very much connected to my own experiences. So as much as I wrote, I feel like there's so much more to write. Like I said, there's something in me that has to do with that first generation, second generation experience of living between cultures. So it's very personal. It's very personal. And generally I would just say it's about what it means to be beautiful.
Cannot wait to read it. What is one of the most significant impact or contribution you hope you will make through your life, through your work, through your research?
For me, my goal is just to always have us question. I think it's one of those things for me. Questioning is such a powerful form of resistance, particularly when I think of Black people, Black women, when you think about the child in you, when we think about our culture, how many of us are given permission to question? You're not supposed to question. It's seen as disrespectful. And so we just quiet ourselves and we take whatever it is, regardless of how we feel, you know? And so, if anything, I just want us all to be questioning everything.
Thanks for that. What is a book that changed the way you think?
The Color Purple. Color Purple is my favorite book. um, but a book that changed the way I think is Homegoing by Yajas. It is a novel. And I am a runaway college professor who taught in Black studies. So, of course, a lot of the origin story for a lot of us starts with either pre-colonial Africa or the period of enslavement. And I think that we have a very flattened idea of what enslavement looked like. What I love about Yajasi's book is that through generations. So imagine one side is the African family, the other side is the family that were taken, the family that stayed, the family that was taken. And generation through generation, we see those who were not captured and lineage of those who were. And it's beautiful to me. But it changed my thinking because even in the teaching, we talk so much about those who were stolen. We talk so much about the genealogy, what it meant to be stolen. What about the mother whose son didn't come home? We never think about them. We never think about what the culture and the society lost. We blame African leaders, kings, whatever the languages we want to use. We blame them for selling their own people. Right? We give it no more context of what those negotiations may have looked like or what that cultural context may have looked like prior to Europeans coming. We just start from here and move forward. But for me, and again, there's something that makes me think like, what did it mean for the mother whose son didn't come home, for the husbands whose wife didn't come home, what did that mean? To sit and wait, to sit and wait. Did you even know what was happening? Did you know what enslavement was? No, they just disappeared. And you have to move on. You just have to move on. Like that book just made me, again, the questioning. Again, on both sides, so much trauma, historical and cultural trauma makes us want to, I'm not going to say forget, but we just stop talking about it. If somebody was lynched or killed, anything violent, don't bring up the name. For me, that book talks about the connection, right? That you could, as much as we want to distance ourselves, especially those of us from West Africa, right? And I learned this going to Jamaica. Jamaica is Caribbean Ghana. And some parts of Jamaica, Caribbean Nigeria. Jamaica is West Africa. Culturally, language, West Africa. You will see your people. You will see your people's faces, undoubtedly. What does it look like to track those families through generations? That book is amazing to me. I would love to teach that book. The book is beautiful. And of course, it's written by a Ghanaian woman, but it's beautiful.
Thanks for sharing. I will order that book immediately after this. Sounds like something I should read regardless.
For sure.
What have you had to unlearn or relearn in order to become the Dr. Yaba you are today?
What did I have to unlearn? That's a hard one. Maybe what I had to relearn is the power of culture. I think I had to relearn the power of Blackness. I had to relearn the power of our origins, because if it wasn't so powerful, folks wouldn't have spent so much time trying to destroy it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think a lot of relearning, and I think relearning and unlearning happen. And
What are you still becoming?
free. I'm still
Free.
becoming free. Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting, just if I were to lean on that, because you seem free in the way you think and how you use your voice and how you show up.
There's a freedom in that. There are other ways. Again, I think the thing that we always have to do, it's why I like reading memoirs and biographies of autobiographies, especially of public figures and faces. I don't think we don't offer each other humanity.
True. That is
Right.
true.
And I'm not saying that directly to you, but
Yes.
I'm often met with, it's almost like if I get depressed, nobody wants to hear that because they can't, it doesn't align with their idea of who I am. And there's a whole nother person outside of the person you might see on your screen. You know what I mean? So a lot of people look a lot of ways to us,
Of course.
and
Thanks
they
for
have a
sharing.
whole other experience.
Yeah. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing.
For
I mean,
sure.
that resonates, because I think I'm often seen as strong and courageous and the one who says the thing. But it comes with a cost. I
For
do
sure.
it nonetheless, but it costs me. And yeah, thanks for sharing.
For sure.
What are you aspiring to in your personal life?
Um, I mean, I would like to be a little more stable in a lot of ways. I think, like, the work that I do comes at a cost, and people are hesitant to pay it.
Mm,
Right? And so I think also because I do so much work and I say that it's for us, people think that I'm volunteering my time. So when I hear the money that some folks get for speaking or for consulting and stuff, and then I know what I'm offered or not offered, I just think, it has to do with the fact that I'm a Black woman and folks are used to us being in service of everybody for not only recognition, but for no compensation. But I think it also has to do with the work that I do. Who wants to pay for that? And so literally, like, sometimes I feel like I'm winging it. Sometimes I wonder if it was a good decision to leave the academy. Like, I'm filled with questions about the choices and decisions that I've made regarding the work that I do. So I would love to be more stable and more secure in that regard.
thanks for sharing.
I mean, I like what I do. I want to be a little bit more strategic
Mm,
moving forward. But yeah, I'm not going to complain. I could,
yeah.
but I
Yeah.
won't,
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
for sure.
A final question. If you could speak to the young person you once were, what would you say to her?
You have no idea. You have no idea how big life is, how big this world is. What you're experiencing right now is so real. And you are allowed to feel everything you feel. But trust me, you will get through it. Trust me.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And with that, I want to say thank you. This has been a masterclass in something that I need to go unpack.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You are phenomenal. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us on Overnight Wisdom. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or made you pause, please leave a comment, or share it with someone who needs to hear it. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts, and if you're feeling generous, a rating or review goes a long way in helping others find us too. Until next time, stay curious, stay tender, and may the wisdom you need find you exactly when you're ready.